Okay, so let's see. We will sort. I most recently updated, so that's just the newest. This is general sort, or recently updated. There we go. I'll throw that link in general if you want to play along at home. And I suppose I should introduce what this is. So welcome to the Habitat public issue triage for March 28th, 2017. And my mouse has been rather click happy lately. So we've got a few issues to run. Oh, I forgot issues with no milestones. So things that have not been triaged yet. Okay. And I can tell I'm a developer for my day job and not a not a a professional facilitator here. So, all right. First up, we have so we've got 11 open issues to run through. If we get all through issues, we can go look at pull requests too, or we can just call it. We'll see what we land on. So if you want to play along at home in our general Slack channel for Habitat SH, we've got a link to most recently updated with no milestone. And our first issue is number 2005, consistent topology per service group. And I'll give you guys a couple seconds to look through the issue there, and then we can just discuss and decide whether this is something we need to fix, if it's something that we'd love for a community member to contribute, if it's something we think that as the core maintainer team we should take on, or if it's not really an issue.
So I commented on this, but my comment I realized later was unfounded. I think this is a common misconception too of mixing group and service group, but I think Justin's got a good point here. So because like today, if you've got like let's say a node app that you want to have on a leader topology, there's nothing stopping you from putting out like 2 nodes on a leader topology, and then or well, I guess it would have to be 3 nodes on a leader topology for anything to happen, and then like you could end up accidentally putting like a 4th and a 5th or whatever node on a standalone topology, and that really wouldn't make, at least from what I don't think that makes any sense at all, for anybody for that to be a desired state. So I think he's got a good point in that we should have some kind of enforcement behind that.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Yeah, because service group and group is definitely, those are 2 different concepts.
Yeah.
So that seems like a straight up bug. So it's classified right, and this should be accepted minor. So we have a couple of, and this might, and we're starting to add some more milestones. So this process will probably change somewhat. But as part of the triage, we've used accepted minor and accepted majors, things as buckets to put in for work that we think that the core team should be doing, or the core maintainer team should be doing, or at least we plan to or would like to get to at some point in time, where the help wanted bucket is kind of like, we would like this, but we probably won't ever dedicate, or we probably won't for some foreseeable future have time to dedicate engineering resources to doing so, and we'd love a community contribution to that effect. So those are kind of the meanings of those milestones. And this is supervisor. There we go. Okay. Any other comments on that one before we move on, as I've already closed it out? I can always go back. Okay. Next issue, 2003, exposed topology and binding. And this is kind of related to what we just talked about, and came before it chronologically. I definitely think that this would be something required, and I think it's mentioned in there that this is kind of required to implement before we could do the consistent topology per service group. So.
This has come up in other discussions too. Like, I know it's come up on Slack as being something that would be nice to have.
Cool. Anyone else want to chime in anything on that, or we're good to go? Good to move on. It's a quiet group, so I think we'll blow through a lot of this. All right. Re-export and forward binding, 2002. So in this case, and I could definitely see this in the case of wrapper packages, where you'd want to pass along a port that comes in from a package you depend on. So like, say you're wrapping Nginx or something like that, and you want to pass along some configuration.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So okay, I see what this is now. So this is about.
Oh no, this is binding. So this is something that you're passing a depth from behind. So yeah. So this is like if you were a middle tier app and you wanted to pass a database user that was being gossiped from.
Oh.
I don't know if we need to support this necessarily. If they're part of the same ring and service group, which they would have to be to get these bindings, you should be able to get that.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we had a little bit more. It seems like I recall this being talked about on Slack. That it's not vividly, but it'd be nice to have a little more context in the issue itself.
All right, so let's see. I see where I think I see where, you know, you might not necessarily care about the database user, but you want to keep that user consistent across a multi-tier app, for example. You want to pass that along. But I'll just ask Justin to elaborate a little more on that. Then you don't have, then your front end doesn't necessarily have to care about what your middle tier knows, nor or anything about the database, for example, or whatever. But feel free to chime in on that if anybody else has some thoughts. We can always come back to that one as well. All right, number 1993, Justin must have been thinking about last time with that new with that new baby around, huh? Yeah. Good. All right. So thoughts on binding apps to databases? Okay, so we actually did just merge a PR on this.
We did.
Yeah, so there's the dot first.
Oh, that one. Yeah. The one I merged.
Yeah. So what this does is dot first will, if I read it right, dot first, if it's in leader topology, will pick the leader, and if not, it picks one of the members. So if you have bind, dot xf first in one of your templates, it will point to the leader if you're in that kind of topology.
Yep.
So I believe that should close this out. But let's see. Well, this
closer related to the one that we just looked at.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. That just answers part one.
Yeah. I mean, it's somewhat. Yeah, I think it's somewhat. Yeah, related.
Yeah. The so bind database topology. So that's 2003. Yeah. So I got a link there now.
Okay, I think I see, or kind of see. So, like, one of the scenarios which kind of makes that other one make a little more sense. So, I think one of the scenarios he's laying out here is, so let's say you've got a database cluster, and you've got a web cluster, and typically, like in a lot of our documentation and examples, you bind one to the other, but maybe you have a proxy load balancing layer sitting in the middle, and so your front end web nodes don't talk directly to the database service. So they wouldn't bind directly to that service. They bind to HA proxy, but HA proxy is binding to that. So it's acting as like a middleman. It has that information. So I think like this illuminates that previous issue where you might want your HA proxy service, for example, to be able to re-export the configuration that it's binding to from, let's say, MySQL or Postgres out to a node or Rails or whatever service group that's binding to it. That makes sense.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So actually, that's in 2002.
At least that's what I'm getting from his point number 2.
Point number 2. Point number 2 to me seems like issue 2002, the re-export and forwarding the bindings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Nell, Chris, and
taking it in.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going too fast on an issue too, because I know both you are a little newer to the project, feel free to say slow down, stop, let some more time to think or ask. Happy to do that as well. Or ping me via Slack, and if you don't want to interrupt the speaking as well. All right, so I suppose that actually adds the context that I was asking for this. So I suppose I can update that to okay. And we'll throw discussing on this one as well yet. Some of that's getting implemented, some of it is yet to be talked through. (1983) post-run hook for service initialization.
Definitely another thing that's come up from time to time in Slack.
Yeah. So I almost think that the reconfigure hook is almost so overloaded, but it would fire in the scenario because when a new member joins or somebody binds to it, things get reevaluated, right? So the reconfigure hook could be used, but man, those reconfigure hooks are going to start getting ugly because it's going to be like, yeah, there's going to be so much conditional logic in those templates to make them, issue something sane.
This one I almost saw like the example he has is like a data, like even for like something that's a standalone where you're not adding a member, but like with a database, like let's say like in a simple scenario you've got a single database, and you need to like set up maybe some users or maybe even some initial data, or schema. When I look at this, like I could definitely see the argument for having a specific hook geared exactly to that runs, like maybe right after install and then never again. At the same time, like if you really need to do that, we have examples out there that does do that. Like you could put it in your run hook and just like put it behind like a flag, which is having its own hook is cleaner. At least that's what it feels like to me. Putting it in a run hook and saying like if these tables exist or if these users exist, then don't do anything. Otherwise, create the users. I mean, it's certainly so like.
But aren't those like related to an application? So now your database hooks have to know about your application that's going to get run there. So it seems to me like that would be something that would come from the application, not necessarily, which would then go in the init of the application to connect to the database.
Yeah, I mean, it could, but a lot of times it's the application itself that gets from the data. At least I mean, different configurations can do this differently, but a lot of the examples that we have, it's the application that gets the configuration from the database. So like a lot of the bind examples that you see, it's the database that's defining like these are the credentials, and the application saying, hey, I'm an application. Oh, you're a database? How do I connect to you? And the database is basically saying, this is how you connect to me. Here's some configuration to help you.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, this seems like something that we'd probably want a little bit more like RFC-ish, some more discussion around in my mind.
Yeah.
I remember like when I first joined the team, it seemed like what I was hearing was like from Jamie and Adam was like, we're going to have very few hooks because you don't need very many hooks. But I've been seeing that seems to be kind of relaxing a little bit as more and more scenarios have been coming out onto the radar.
I mean, that totally makes sense because you don't want to build what you don't need.
Totally, yeah.
But yeah, trying to think how to update this one here. So like,
I think an RFC discussion would be appropriate in this case.
And we don't have, at least we don't have official, we don't have like actual RFCs yet for Habitat, but I think it's certainly fair to just say, you know, let's see what other people.
We do have some RFC issues around it, but yeah, there's not a format. It's not as formalized as like we have in the chef realm. Let's go ahead and edit rather than add that. Let's do this. That sums up better than any comment I could add, I think. Okay. And now we're back to our friend 1733. Do not build software as root.
Oh man.
This perennial issue.
Talking about this like half a dozen times, it feels like.
So let's get down to where.
Not that it's not valid or anything. It always comes up.
So we did get some updates about a week ago here. So let's to recap for those playing along. There's been some discussion about not building as root because of polluting environments if you reuse a studio. And the idea being a build service reusing a studio or so. But the general intention is that studios are kind of disposable. They give you the isolation, and so being root inside of the root of a studio, there's not all that much that you're going to be affecting outside of the build process. So we had asked for a little more clarification from the user, and we just got some. So let's catch up on that. Okay.
I think we might need more input from the user since we end with a question there.
Yes, but I see what he's asking for there. Like, yeah, so your build process could modify other packages that you've pulled down as dependencies, where things would seem to work in the studio, but then not elsewhere. So, yeah. But yes, yeah, I think we do need some. Yeah, Adam summed it up nicely there. So we're still waiting on some commentary back, and I believe this particular user is out at KubeCon this year or right now. So not this year, it's not a whole year, and so we'll probably be a little bit before we hear back on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, 1778. Remove the dependency on the Docker daemon to export Docker images. So it looks like something that's feasible to build. So yeah, you're just basically building a tar archive, I believe, with some metadata. But I think this falls nicely into help wanted. Be awesome to have, but I don't see it on our schedules anytime soon. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thanks. All right. All right. And make the CI builds, publish on creation of tags to bin tray stable. I think this is happening, right?
I think
Matt?
Yeah, it should be. Let's see. Make CI builds. Oh wait. Oh yes, this is done. Yeah, we can just close this.
Yeah.
Yay, closing.
Yeah. Matt rubbed a little bit of CI wizardry on that to make that happen.
Do a little DevOps there.
Yeah. All right. What's funny is we're not using any of our internal CI tooling to build,
Right.
to build that.
Thank you,
but anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interim solution. Until...
Are we in that same place with this one where AppFair and Travis should upload Windows and Linux hearts to a temp depot?
Yes, we are. Yeah, that can close.
So is that going to acceptance or to my depot?
That is the Windows one are going to yours. The Linux ones are going to acceptance.
Cool.
And eventually we'll need to do some more ironing out there, but that's kind of what was intended out of this is done.
Yep. Awesome. So basically what happens is on every successful commit to master that impacts the supervisor or HAB-CLI or one of their dependencies, we publish unstable builds of the heart packages and unstable builds of the HAB-CLI to bin tray.
Yes, so, and we build the studio too, and that goes into that also goes to the bin tray Docker registry.
So should we have something fixed that we want somebody to take a look at, or if you're feeling like you want to live dangerously, you can definitely grab the unstable builds. If you're on Linux or Mac, I believe the install sh script that is in the repo lets you point to unstable install builds, and we should really do a PowerShell version of that for Windows.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. And document HAB plan init. So unless we've already done this.
I don't think we have. And actually, like with the blueprint work that we're doing, this will become more. I have my guess is that this will rise to the surface through that work, because I think the blueprint it's very going to be kind of plan init. It's very much related to plan init.
Okay. So it's something
Anyway,
that we should be,
yeah.
that we need to be doing.
Yeah.
So we'll get it off the triage. And last issue, but not least, compression stage of the build is very slow. And let's see when the last update was here, 27 days, a month ago. So some of the context around this issue, when you're building in the Docker Studio, it can feel very, very slow, and not just feel, it is, because the compression doesn't, the shared file system stuff really adds performance overhead, and so it's just very, very painful. And so there were there was some discussion around adding a compression flag level, because XZ was determined to have kind of the best trade-offs early on. Fletcher, I think, was the one who did a lot of the profiling of that. And there's also been discussion around alternate compression mechanisms. I believe we've always elected to stay with XZ for the time being. And but it sounds like there's also discussion happening around a compression level flag. So any thoughts? Anyone's experienced building some packages that feeling like it takes too long?
Personally, usually no. It mainly hits, and I mean, it makes sense that it hits me like after, like, once the package artifacts exceed a certain threshold, like around, like, it seems like in the 100 megabyte ballpark, it starts feeling slow. But I mean, there's physics too. Like, the bigger the bigger the artifact, the slower it's going to be. Like, that's just a fact of life. And I mean, yeah, you're always going to have that debate of pack time versus decompression. You want to spend a little bit more time packing it up to make to get a better compression and make the end download faster. I feel like where we're at right now is acceptable, but I could also see at least making it configurable. I think that makes good sense. Because yeah, you're gonna have outliers where configuring it to a different setting may make good sense. Like, I feel like the settings we have now is great for like the 80%, but maybe not so much for the 20.
Now that I see you were in a meeting.
Just to say, I don't have a lot of experience building really large packages, so it's not horrible. I think it does seem noticeably longer on Windows versus Linux because we use the Docker Studio on Windows, but that was it.
Cool.
So I mean, maybe leaving it as a help wanted for a configuration setting would be a good way to
That works for me.
do it for now.
It helps if I unmute before I start talking. I've been talking here to myself for a while. So I dropped that in help wanted as a new feature. We are now down to 4 open uncategorized issues that are primarily discussions currently, which is awesome. And we have some time yet, but only a few more minutes, but not too much more. So do you guys want to look at some pull requests, or should we call it?
We can look. I don't think there's going to be much to look at though, because I think most of these pull requests are either like do not merge state, like in progress, or very, very new.
So what is the blueprints thing? I'm actually not familiar with that.
So blueprints are they're like so when you're building, so there's all sorts of these different kind of scenarios based on the platform that you're building under Hab. So like you've got Rails apps, you've got Node app, Go apps, all these unlimited number almost of possible types of applications you can build in Habitat, and each one of those applications have like idiomatic ways of building themselves, right? Like, with Ruby, like if you're going to build a Rails app, 90% of the time, this is how you're going to build a Rails app. You just kind of assume that you have like a certain set of dependencies. You're going to want Ruby, bundler. A Ruby build is often going to look a certain way. Same thing, with Node. And so the idea of so today, what you have to do is you have to kind of like start from scratch. And if I want to build, let's say, 5 Ruby apps, I'm going to have to like kind of do all this boilerplate stuff for each one of those Ruby apps. And so the idea with blueprints, and by the way, we're not going to call them blueprints. Blueprints is like kind of like a code name. I think that the name that we're converging on is automatic. So you'll have automatic plans and manual plans. Today, all of our plans are manual, but an automatic plan will basically, you'll say like when you create a plan, like if you do like a Hab plan in it, you'll give it a like a flavor, like what we're calling right now, we're calling a blueprint, and essentially it'll scaffold out a plan for you that fits to that kind of that idiomatic flavor of whatever it is, of whatever that blueprint or that automatic plan that you want to create. So if you want to create a Go application, you'll say, and first of all, there has to be an automatic plan for Go in existence, and we'll build these out as they come, or the community will build them out. And so let's say there is a Go plan, you'll say, hey, I want to create a Go plan. And when you do a Hab plan in it, rather than getting what you get today, you'll get something, very opinioned to, skewed to a Go, what you would expect for building a Go application. So it'll just be a lot less, that'll be a lot less typing that you'll have to do as a Go application. And it'll also be, like, if you're just starting off with Habitat, like, well, I want to build a Go application, how do I do that? Hopefully the scaffolding that you'll see in front of you will be kind of a guide that will make sense to a Go developer.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, because right now, like, our plans are really opinionated towards building a native application, something that, and specifically like a, something that you build with like GCC, right? Because you got or that would have a make file, because you have your typical make, configure kind of workflow. So blueprints add a little variety to that.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us thank you all for joining us for the Habitat issue triage, and we'll be back at it next week.